At any time when you feel any changes, just you are free. Don't worry. You can tell me, and I can always change it according to your need at whatever the time. I can
Okay.
always change gears very quickly.
Okay.
Right. So let's talk about activity-based costing. Now, what do you know about activity-based costing, Matthew?
They use cost drivers, cost pools.
Yeah, all that is for what? What to try to get out of all that? Cost drivers, cost pools, yes, you are right. Right? Basically, if you look at the cost of a product or a cost of a service, we have a couple of components. Particularly if it's a product, we have a direct materials cost, isn't it?
Yes.
Direct material. Now that one we have no problem because we know how much materials we have been used. We can cost it straight away. Direct labor, also to a great extent, we know that it has taken 2 hours, 3 hours or whatever it may be. Per labor hour, we can do it. The problem comes up with lot of overhead costs.
Yes.
Overhead costs. And today in the modern business manufacturing setup, bulk of the cost is overheads because even the earlier it was about 50% labor cost, 40% material cost and 10% overheads. But today it's working the other way about. Still the material cost may be about 40%, but 10% labor cost, 50% something like overhead cost. Because we are using a lot of computers, we are using a lot of automation, and all that means lot of overheads, lot of machines, depreciation, etc. Now, we must have a way to apportion that overhead cost to particular products or services which we render.
Yeah.
And why do we need that one? Because we must know what is the total cost of my product which I have delivered to Matthew and how much should I charge for him for that product. And for that to happen, because the overheads are fairly a big component, a 50% component, if I make a mistake in my overhead allocation or apportionment, I might get a wrong costing.
Yeah.
And when I get a wrong costing, I might give you a wrong price and you might decide you are not going to buy the product from me. And because of my wrong costing, because I'm the management accountant, I gave the information to the management saying, this is the cost of the product because 50% of the cost is overheads, but I allocated it, apportioned it wrongly. And because of that, I gave a very wrong cost for the product. Because of that, my sales, the people who are pricing has to price the product accordingly, and it has become so uncompetitive, and I have lost my customer, which may run into millions of dollars.
Yes.
Earlier, it was not so much of a big problem because the overheads were just about 10%. So the margin of error was maximum 10%. But here, today in the modern world, 50% of your expenditure is overheads. If you make an error, the margin of error can be up to 50%. And today we live in a very, very competitive world. $1 price difference can mean that we have lost $1 million business. Customers have a big choice, and therefore customers have a choice worldwide. They don't need to get restricted to UK. They don't need to get restricted to USA. They can just search the internet, go anywhere and buy whatever they want. China is there, Japan is there. So therefore, if you don't do your proper costing, you can. So earlier what happened was all the manufacturing overhead costs were apportioned on the basis of two ways. One, based on the labor hours. Second one, based on the machine hours. So the theory behind that was, or the assumption behind that was saying that our overheads are moving along with the labor hours. More labor hours, more overheads. That was the theory. So because of that, we were going and apportioning all the overheads based on labor hours. So for example, if one particular product took three labor hours and another product took 1 labor hour, we will charge for one product say 1x, and for the second product we will charge 3x overheads.
Yes.
But you and I know that may not be the reality. Say for example, if you take the rent as overhead, it will not move with the labor hours. Just because you have more laborers, the rent is not going to move upwards immediately, right? So when you try to apportion overheads on that kind of a basis, you might get some unrealistic figures. The next way was with more machines coming up, people thought better way to apportion overheads is through machine hours. There again, the idea was, right, the idea was thinking that our overheads will move with the more machine hours being used. But we know that again may not be right. For example, the canteen usage of your employees may not depend on the machine hours, isn't it? It's the number of people who are patronizing the canteen, and if you are providing some subsidized food or whatever, it won't move up or down with the machine hours. So trying to allocate it on the machine hours is also may not be particularly right. So they were the two traditional ways we absorb the overhead, and that is what we were calling traditional costing. It is still completely out of date, but it is gradually becoming out of date. So for you to understand this new change for activity-based costing, we must understand the new production environment. When I say new production environment, the today's manufacturing environment compared to maybe 30, 40, 50 years back. What are the changes that has happened? The changes what has happened is we have more machinery and more computerized systems compared to the manual labor we had it long time back. Right? And although we were talking about the learning curve greatly, today we can see the learning curve is going out of style. The reason the learning curve to happen well, we must be producing products on a continuous basis so that the people will learn, and they will be in a kind of a like machines. They are so experienced they can do it, even closing their eyes.
Thinking.
Even closing the eyes without thinking. But today, it's not that kind of an environment. Today, we don't produce mass scale, large scale production. We produce it according to the customer needs. Small batch sizes, very specific custom orders. Now, my son-in-law is working in one of the big Sri Lankan company, which is the plant is in Bangladesh, because in Bangladesh the overheads are very low, and he's working in that company with about 10,000, 12,000 employees, and he's producing all these ladies undergarments for the USA market. But they are very customer specific. You can't produce mass scale and put it to the market. It is for this particular customer a shipment, so he has to produce according to the customer order. Large, high up market in the USA is ordering and you have to produce. So you can't get a labor learning curve in that kind of a thing, because you have to produce for this customer in this style, customer B another style, so you can't do a learning curve.
Yes.
And most of the things are basically machine designed, machine stitched, so it just goes through a machine process, less use of direct labor. So because of that, more indirect overheads, and therefore more machines, more depreciation, more insurance, and comparatively less direct cost. Material cost, I don't think it has got changed. Whether you do it manual or labor, manual or automated, the material is almost the same. Right? And therefore, the traditional costing methods what we had, taking the overheads and apportioning on the basis of labor hours or machine hours, is becoming inaccurate and tend to be somewhat outdated. Because the largest component of the product cost is indirect overheads. I think if I remember last time, the case study was not the last time, and the last time it was a film manufacturing or something like that. But before that, we had something on the mobile telephones. Bulk of the expenditure was the overheads. So you have to have a right allocation, right identification of the cost behavior. How is the overheads behaving? Which is driving the overhead? This is what we call the cost drivers.
Yeah.
So because what happens is today, when you don't know the cost drivers or the cost behavior, how it goes up or down, you can't have a proper cost control methods. And even though with all the new techniques what we know, still cost control is very, very important. You remember the Michael Porter said, there are two ways we can get a competitive advantage. One is what we call cost leadership. If I can produce the product at a lower cost than you, then I should be able to come to the market at a lower price, and that way I should be in a better position to build up the market. The other way to get a competitive advantage is to produce something what we call a unique product. Unique product. Something, which the others are not producing. Now, for example, if you take a Mercedes-Benz car, it's a unique product. They don't go by the cost because they have a separate kind of a value prestige or whatever it may be, and they go on that one. Right? Not that everyone can manufacture Mercedes-Benz, and therefore Mercedes-Benz is a different car. But all the other common cars, they have to fight for the market. So there are two ways we can get a competitive advantage. One is to low cost strategy. Other one is to what we call product differentiation. Some of these things will be useful for your E2 also. Right?
Yes.
Also
I've done E2.
Yeah. Also for the case study also. So then the presently labor cost is very little. And when we take that 10% labor cost, and on that basis, when we try to allocate a 50% overhead cost, surely we are having a mismatch. We try to base everything, 50% of the cost, we are trying to base on a 10% cost structure, which is going to be somewhat a big mismatch. And therefore, wrong costing, wrong product cost, and therefore will lead to wrong pricing decision and might end up with losing big markets. So this time the management case study is not yet officially out, but the management case studies this time it's all about the so-called $1 shops, that kind of a organization, right?
Yes.
It's a company that has a number of large retail outlets all over, and they sell almost every product at $1. So it has its unique features. You don't need to, you don't need to have pricing, all that kind of thing. You don't need to do anything. Every item is priced at $1. These wives like that kind of shops, ladies. I remember when I took my wife to Singapore, the moment she see a $1 shop, she will run to that one and she'll wait for hours in that $1 shop. and it promotes what they call impulse buying. They go to buy something, but this is also $1, that is also $1, and they will spend $100 in that little shop in a moment without realizing. So that's a kind of a strategy what these people have adopted. So you will see in our pricing formulas, we don't have that kind of a thing. But the new modern world have this kind of new strategies. $1, $10, something like that. People go for that one. So this is the background of the new production environment, and therefore our formal traditional costing, what we did was we looked at a predetermined overhead recovery rate. What we do is we don't wait till we find the actual overhead. We budget for a particular overhead. Let's assume that for the month of April for next year, for next month, we will budget our overheads 100,000. And then we will say the budgeted number of machine hours are 20,000. So 100,000 divided by 20,000, we get what we call overhead absorption rate, $5
Yeah.
per machine hour. So if a product has
Mm-hmm.
taken 10 machine hours, we will allocate $50. If another product has
Yeah.
taken 25 machine hours, we will allocate $125 overheads, right?
Yeah.
But you might find actually it is not the machine hours that is driving the overhead. Now let's look at something like a customer profitability, right? You have me as a customer and you have another person as a customer. Both the products
Mm-hmm.
are taking $10, 10 hours, 10 hours, right? I'm also
Yeah.
buying a particular product. It is also going to cost you 10 hours, and another person is also going to buy a product that is also going to cost you 10 hours. So you will allocate $50 for my business. You will allocate $50 for the other customer's business. But
Yes.
other customer is a very troublesome character, giving you 100 telephone calls and asking when is the order coming, this, that, and the other,
Mm-hmm.
and you know his order is still only 100,000, but you have to deliver 10 times over. My order 100,000, right? But you have to deliver
Mm-hmm.
only one time over. Now,
Yes.
if you try to allocate the overheads on the machine hour basis, for both the customers, you will allocate the same overhead. But you will agree
Yeah.
with me, the second customer is a real troublesome customer. You have to spend
Yeah.
more on telephone calls. You have to spend more on delivery, and just to charge him also the same 20,000 overhead, just to charge me also the same 20,000 overheads is not proper.
No.
Not proper. But this is what we do. This is what we
Yeah.
do. And we think that, you know, both the customers are same profitable. We don't realize that the second customer is a very troublesome man. We have to answer 100 telephone calls. We have to send him 100 deliveries, and therefore he is a very costly customer. But we don't get
Yes.
that figure out of our traditional costing method.
Yeah. I agree.
This is what, so it is basically based on the volume of activity. So actually we were talking about the machine hours, and also we were talking about the labor hours. But I remember, but there's another way of allocating these overheads. They allocate the overheads on the basis of material cost. So there was last time, I think it was the operational case study. It was something like manufacturing beehives, right? Beehive. Beehives can be manufactured by two types of wood. One was what we call cedar, the other one what we call pine, right? Cedar
Okay.
is more expensive. High quality, cedar is more expensive. So cedar, for example, a square meter of cedar is $300. Pine square meter is $100, right? So,
Okay.
but you will agree with me, whether it is cedar beehive or pine beehive, it is the same overheads, right? It's the same
Yeah.
process, same overheads.
Yeah.
But they were
Yeah. Yeah. Just
charging,
materials and stuff like
yeah, they were charging the overheads on the basis of the wood cost. So they are producing a cedar beehive and they are producing a pine beehive. For the cedar beehive, they will charge 3 times overheads than the pine beehive.
that. Okay.
Is it justifiable? You will say definitely no. But that's the
Yeah.
way they were doing. That's what the traditional costing method. So there was in the case study they asked a question. Is it right? Can we change it? In which way can we change it? So these are the things that is coming up in OT paper, coming up in your case study
Mm-hmm.
also.
Yeah.
So basically, full unit cost is computed in order to satisfy financial. So our financial accounting standard IAS 2 says whenever we measure up inventory or whenever we value up inventory, we must take the total production cost. Total production
Mm-hmm.
cost is direct materials, direct labor, variable overheads, and
Yeah.
fixed overheads portion. Direct
Yeah.
materials, we have no problem. Direct labor also, we have no problem. Variable overheads also no problem. But the problem is with fixed overheads. So fixed overheads, we have to allocate it, to portion it, and on that basis, our inventories will be valued according to IAS 2. So if we only put drawn overheads to our inventory figure can be overstated, our inventory figure can be understated. And when the inventories are overstated, our profits will be overstated. When the inventories are understated, our profit will be understated. And that only not will affect our shareholders, that will not only affect our employees, it will also affect our good friends, taxmen also. Tax authorities. They are waiting to see how much profit we have made because they want to get the maximum tax out of the company. So they will also go into the inventory valuations, etc. But they might not look at all the things. They might come across some of these errors in overhead portion, etc. So therefore, always whenever we want to make decision about pricing, we have to look at the full production cost. So full production cost means overheads included. And therefore, we should be looking in terms of on long-term decisions taking the full production cost. But sometimes, maybe in your, did you do P1?
Yeah.
Right. When you did P1, you would have come across something called relevant costing.
Yes.
Remember relevant costing? That is where you look at not the overheads, you look at the incremental cost. Because whatever it is, your overheads are there. Right? So during bad times, particularly during competitive time, you realize we have these overheads. Whether I sell or not, I have the overhead. So you look at something called relevant incremental cost. If I try to do an extra order for Matthew, how much will additional cost be there? So surely I have to buy materials, surely I have to buy labor, surely I have to incur some variable overheads, but surely my fixed overheads will remain whether I do the order for Matthew or not. Right? So these are what we call relevant costs. So I look at all the relevant costs. Relevant costs are coming to $15. If I try to apportion my overheads also, it will be another $10. Total cost is $25. And if I want a profit of $5, I have to price it at 30. Matthew is not prepared to pay 30. Right? Matthew is not prepared to pay 30 because he can buy from some other person at $20. So I have to decide, can I give to Matthew at $20? I say yes. Why? Because my direct relevant costs are only $15, right? $15. So if I don't do that order for $20, at least I will not have that $5 which I can recover for my overhead. I will not be recovering. I will be losing because I'm not going to do that order and I just lose that money. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So because of that, what we do is, for short-term decisions, we use something called relevant costing, which is incremental cash flow. But in the long term, you can't go on doing that one. If I do every order 15 plus 5 for Matthew, if I do the 15 plus 5 for the next one, 15 plus 5 for the next one, I'm not going to recover my overheads. And in the long term, I will make a loss. So, but for short term, in bad times, in difficult times, you can use relevant costing as a good pricing strategy to knock off your competitor and also to recover some part of overheads which otherwise will remain unrecovered. So this is what we basically looked at in the P1, but in P2 also we come across that one, incremental revenue and incremental expenses. Now we come to ABC costing. Having been very critical of our traditional thing, it's not only good to be critical, we have to find a solution. So the solution they found was they looked at every cost, what was being incurred, and they found the costs are not moving, particularly the overheads are not really moving with machine hours, not moving with labor hours. It moves with certain activities. Right? So they've shifted their focus, the base thinking from various expenditure headings to something what they call activities. Now, for example, you might have an activity called customer complaint unit. Customer complaint unit. Why do we have a customer complaint unit? Because for the customers to come and complain about the delays, the quality, etc., etc., etc. Right? So what we basically do is by having that kind of a thing, more customer complaints, more the cost. Right? More customer complaints, more the cost. So if a particular customer is complaining 10 times, and if another customer is complaining 5 times, we know the customer who is complaining 10 times is costing my customer complaint unit double the cost of the other one. So we try to drive the cost, we try to identify the cost in terms of, not in terms of finance function, HR function, production function or anything like that. We try to identify the cost in terms of activities.
Yeah.
Now, for example, warehouse. In a warehouse, there may be lot of supplies coming up, and the activities number of in-house the in-house deliveries or the incoming delivery. That's the activity. More goods that come to the warehouse, more the cost. Right? It's not the number of labor hours. It's not the machine hours. It is the number of the trucks that is coming up. That is what is going to drive the cost. Look at the delivery outside. You are going to deliver, right? It is not the number of trucks. It is the number of the kilometers. One person, same order, one person $100 order, he is 10 kilometers away from your warehouse. Another person is 25 kilometers away. So the activity of running the vehicle is the thing that is going to drive the cost.
Yes.
So we have to, this is our skill. This is the skill of the management accountant. We have to find out which drives the activity. Now, if you look at the operating theater in a hospital, what drives the cost of the surgeries, right? It is the number of setups that they have to do, the theater for the surgeries.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right, that is going to drive the cost, number of setups, because once you do a kidney operation, you can't do a heart operation without resetting the theater, right? So you have to do a setup, right? Now, yesterday I took my wife to a doctor where in Sri Lanka. He is doing about 60 cataracts operations in just about 2 or 3 hours time. And I was watching the way he was doing that, one theater is set. So one theater set 60 patients. Mr. A come, immediately done, gone. Mr. B come, immediately gone. Mrs. C comes, do that kind of a thing. One setup, 60 operations. But say my daughter had to go to a heart surgery, 7 hours, one operation. So, one setup, 7 hours. There, one setup, 60 patients. So, you have to look at what is driving the cost. That is how you have to identify. The moment you decide activities, the next thing what you have to decide is what is driving that one. And that's what we call cost driver.
Yeah.
Cost driver. Now, for example, a person who is raising invoices in your company, if he is raising invoices, right, his cost is driven by the number of invoices, isn't it?
Yes.
More number of invoices he raises, more the cost. Stationery, right, his own time, all that is the cost. So you have to pool all the cost to one pool, and that pool will have many different types of costs. It may be electricity, it may be stationery, it may be the telephone time, it may be the staff time. All that you have to pull it into one cost pool and then see this cost pool, what is driving the cost. What will make the cost increase? What will make the cost reduce? So, okay, number of invoices, number of dispatch deliveries, whatever it may be, we have to find it out. And this is what the activity-based costing is simply doing. Activities will drive the cost. So basically, the idea is traditional systems assume that the cost is driven by the volumes, but activity-based costing assumes, and more correctly, that it is not driven by the volumes, it is driven by the activity. Two customers, one customer takes 10 deliveries, 100,000 invoice, second customer 100,000 invoice, one delivery. Obviously, the first customer is more costly because 10 activities, whereas the other one only one activity.
Okay.
This is where.
Am I right in?
Sorry. Yes, sir. Matthew.
Sorry, was I right in saying that even activity-based costing systems and costing the company as a whole still involves traditional elements?
Yeah, because not that still you can get everything into an activity-based pool. Still, there are certain things which we have to do on the traditional.
Yes.
So it's a mix. So that is why, even though ABC costing is told to be a very, very accurate one, it's not really 100% truthful statement.
Everything.
Yeah. Right? It is surely better than the traditional costing. At least it attempts to find out the cost behavior, but easily said than done. Because I know I have been working in certain organizations where we try to introduce the activity-based costing. Not so easy, because the problem is sometimes the fear to identify the cost drive itself is a very tough one. And also still we have to allocate certain costs to the cost pool. For example, the rent, right? Now rent, you pay a big 100,000 rent. You have to allocate that rent to each and every cost pool. So maybe the customer control department or the customer relationship management unit, right? They are occupying 2,000 square feet. So maybe you will allocate out of 100,000, if it is 100,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet to that particular area. But having allocated, you might still find there's an open lobby area.
Yeah.
Who is going to take that open lobby area? Because I was doing some costing for a Sri Lankan hospital on activity-based costing. So the question was, okay, we can allocate the surgery area, rent to the surgery area, all that. But what about the lobby areas? When the lobby area comes, who is going to bear the cost? So we have to still do some traditional costing methods. So ABC costing has not 100% replaced the traditional costing, but it has removed to a great extent traditional costing. And you will see in your questions, earlier they will say, for example, they were going by labor hours, the entire overheads. Now they will say, this cost we will go by the number of setups. This cost we will go by the number of units produced, right, or whatever, the number of kilometers run. But there will be a residual amount. They will say that they will still go by the labor hours. Because there is still element. Because if you are trying to do activity-based costing, you have to look for lot of activity. And if you are trying to look for lot of activities, the costing will not be feasible. You will have 1 million activities. You can't do costing for 1 million activities. It will take million number of years to do your costing. And by that time, the product is rotten, product is outdated. So we have to do it faster. So generally it is believed the activity should be restricted to 6 or 7 the most. Okay. So when you try to do that one, you have to again sort of compromise on your reality and then come to do that one. So you can, as you rightly said, you have a mix of activity-based costing and traditional costing in the modern world. Having said that, not that everyone should go for activity-based costing. The reason being, activity-based costing, what are we trying to do? We are trying to allocate that overheads more accurately. But imagine your overheads are very little. Imagine you have an organization where the overheads are very little. Now, that kind of organization, is it worthwhile for you to do activity-based costing? I remember I was working in a small organization after I retired, and it was basically doing some event management and recruitment and something. Only 7 people in the organization. So my managing director was a lady. She went for some seminar on activity-based costing, and she came back and she said, Kumar, hey, I went for a super seminar. Why don't we introduce activity-based costing in our company? I asked why? What for? Only 7 people. We know our cost. We know what we are doing. Why we need big activity-based costing in an organization like that? Because you have to be mindful, activity-based costing is a very expensive process. You have to analyze because our ledger accounts, our financial accounts are fit to look at the expenditure heading. We look at electricity, we look at water, we look at salaries, we look at depreciation, we look at telephone, all that. But when it comes for the activity-based costing, we have to look at that telephone and see what activities did this telephone bill come from. And we have to go and reallocate all that telephone into various activities. Electricity, we have to go. So it's a very complicated process. I remember that 25 years back, I started doing activity-based costing when it was new. No software at that time. It was very manual. And I remember my whole flow was with all the paper.
All put into piles.
Papers all over. Could not walk on the floor because I put all the papers and I was doing activity-based costing. But today, thank God, we have lot of software to support this kind of thing, and we can do it. But still for all, there is a human element in it, and still for all, there are many things that is still not really right. So these are the areas that our examiner is trying to work on us. So, earlier the questions were very simple calculations like calculate the absorption costing product price, calculate the activity-based costing product price. But today he goes beyond that one, little bit more into the theory side to test our knowledge, and he will give a certain background scenario and ask whether activity-based costing should be applied or not. So it all depends whether the overheads are very high proportion, right? If the overheads are little proportion, there is hardly a use of activity-based costing. And activity-based costing is needed when you have many products, and where you want to really find out the cost of each product more accurately. But if you are producing one product, it does not matter whether it is activity-based costing or traditional costing. Ultimately, every overhead must get absorbed, must be recovered, and therefore activity-based costing becomes useful. So we can see the examiner now trending towards trying to penetrate into our mind to find out whether we know the basics. Because we have learned the formulas to divide the total cost by activity-based cost driver and to work out the figures. But sometimes he goes beyond that now. So we have to be somewhat mindful for that one. So the ABC procedure, basically, it is basically, as I said, it's a support activity. Because the support activities only cost overhead. So what are our support activities? Finance, HR function, right? And IT function today, big support activity IT function. So there are many other support activities, procurement function, many support activities. These are where we have to look at the ABC procedure. So it goes on a simple three-step philosophy. Basically, the idea is support activities cost. Finance division, cost. HR division, cost. IT division, cost. Then products consume these activities. HR, we need it, although it is not directly, we can't say how much HR is in our Coca-Cola bottle, what we drink, but we know there is an element of HR in that Coca-Cola which we drink, or the chocolates that we eat, right? So finance also there is. The chocolate slab will only see the cocoa and the sugar and the malt and the label and everything, but it does not say, even though when we taste it, but there is the bitter finance also in that chocolate, sweet chocolate slab. Finance, HR, everything in that, transport. So therefore, cost should be charged on the basis of consumption of the activity. This is the key crux of the ABC. The cost should be charged not based on the volume, but based on the consumption. It does not matter it is 10 units or 1 unit, but how much of activity it is consuming. So basically, it's as I said, it's an alternate product costing. It's not a new thing. It is an improvement to traditional costing. It is still a system of absorption costing. It still allocates cost on to cost pools. Then the cost pools are taken based on the cost driver, and we have to find out the real cost driver. So sometimes the examiner might give you certain activities and ask you what should be the ideal cost driver. Not very easy, right? Sometimes very easy, sometimes not very easy. We need to have a lot of intelligence, lot of experience, lot of knowledge to identify the cost driver. So basically the ABC diagram, we have the overhead cost, the material handling, that is one of the cost pools. Then we have procurement, one of the cost pools. Then we have setup, right? So like that, this overhead cost can be set up to many cost pools. So I have put up 3 here, and then for each of the cost pool, we have to look at the cost driver, which drives the material handling activity. Surely the material activity handling is driven by the cost per material movement. So we have to find out what is the cost per material movement. Procurement, cost per purchase order. It's not the value, right? The effort that goes to raise a purchase order. Whether the value is 100,000 or 1 million, raising the purchase order, same cost of stationery, same time, and it's not the value, it is the number of purchase orders. Then number of setup. So when you get all these things, it is total overhead cost or the product cost. Right? Actually, the blue cage should not be product cost. It is the product overhead cost, right? But we get is the overhead cost. To this, we must add the material. We must add the labor to get the total product cost. Now, this is where in our examination we have to be very careful, because unfortunately in the OT paper, one disadvantage is the examiner or the computer does not see your workings. Right? So, you have to read the question very, very carefully. If they ask for the total product cost, you must give the overhead cost plus material plus labor. If they ask for the total cost, it is the material, labor plus overheads plus selling and administration cost also. If they just ask the overhead cost, then it is the after cost driver what we get. So we have to be very, very careful with our examiner, because they have been a little bit nasty in the last exams. He have been putting up questions, mixing up, shuffling up. Sometimes he asks for the total product cost. Sometimes he asks for the total cost. Sometimes he asks for the overhead cost. So, and he will give 4 answers. Sometimes when you work out the overhead cost, there is an answer 120. You might go and click it 120. But that is not the right answer, because he's not asking for the overhead cost, he's asking for the product cost. So there's another answer called 180. That may be the right answer. So we have to be very, very careful with our examiner.
Yeah, I've noticed that before. I'd do the calculation for something and be like, okay, that's the right answer. And then I'd go to like the next question down the line. Then I'd think, hold on. And I'd go back, re-look at my steps, and I'd be like, okay, that's the wrong answer. This is the right answer.
Exactly.
But I just answered it in an incorrect way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very tricky.
Yeah. This is the disadvantage of our OT paper. Earlier, when we were doing the big question paper, he can see the workings, and he will, even if I got the wrong final answer, he will see the workings. He will say, he will know this man has done everything, but it's a careless mistake, and he will give you 70% of the mark. But here, either 0 or full mark. That's all. Or halfway through. So that's this is why we need to be very, very skilled for the exam to read the question.
Yes.
So the activities, we have to always find out the activities which is going to consume the overhead. So there are 4 ways to identify the activity. One is by the logistical transactions. So these are the movements of materials or people, the logistics, right? So the number of invoices raised, number of dispatch orders raised, or the number of kilometers that you have to travel about. So that's what we call logistical way of identifying activity. Next one is balancing transactions. So basically you try to look at the resource availability, like the limited available resources, and then you try to work out on the balancing activity. Then quality, very important this one. Today in the modern business world, quality has taken priority over cost. The customer has a big choice, and therefore we should be producing quality goods. And that means the quality need to be examined. So whatever the cost that we incur for quality inspections could be considered as an activity. Right? So remember in your P1, P2, you would have done something called prevention cost, appraisal cost, internal failure cost, external failure cost, all related to the quality. So that's another way of identifying an activity. Then the final one is chain transaction, right? As I said, the customers' demand patterns are changing. So basically one customer may ask 200,000 units, one customer may ask 10 units. Same traveling, same transport. So with the 10 unit customers the same transport, 200,000 customers the same transport, right? So you can obviously see the 200,000 customer is more profitable because we spend 10 kilometers and he is definitely more profitable than the small customer. This is why today you will see all over the banks discourages the small customers from coming to bank with them. Reason? Because they are a big customer or a small customer, they have to maintain the account, they have to maintain the balances, they have to send monthly statements, etc., etc., and that is a big cost for them. So they try to match to do some kind of balancing transaction and to work it through a kind of a setup, right? So that's a kind of a scenario that we had to look at.
Okay.
So finally, let's look at how to identify the cost drivers. I'm sure you know this one, but basically we have many ways to identify cost drivers. Very easy to put it me on the slide, but on the real detail, it's not very easy. We have to go through that one and try to find it out.
Okay.
Right. So these are some of the few things that I managed to carry on with you today. So what I'm going to look at next time is to look at some of the questions on these areas.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll try to see what we learned today and what we have not learned today. Through the questions, we will try to get into the real swing.
Okay. That sounds good, Kumar.
Yeah. How is your diary
this week? I'm free.
Right? So
I'm free.
Today is Tuesday. How about Friday?
Yeah, Friday's good for me.
Shall we make it Friday? What time is convenient to you?
I'm free all day, Kumar, so whichever time suits you.
Right. So shall we make it 6 o'clock on Friday?
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
That's
so
good.
I will send you some questions, but we will do it together. You can try it. You can try. Nothing lost. You can try it, but we will try to do it together to identify some of these issues what we came across today.
Yeah, that sounds good, Kumar. Thank you.
Right. I'll see you on Friday at 6 o'clock, Matthew.
Yeah.
Take care.
Have a nice few days, Kumar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.